Welcome to Live Daf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf, which is Eruvin, Daf Kuf Gimel. We are at the Mishnah, 10 lines from the top of the Amud. And what the Gemara discussed earlier, the heter to do malachis in the Beis HaMikdash for the sake of the Karbanos. We discussed the concept of Ein Shavus B'Mikdash. The Chachamim suspended the Isurei D'Rabbanan on Shabbos and Yom Tov for the sake of the Akrov of the Karbanos. We discussed the case of the harp whose string snapped on Shabbos. The Gemara tells us we can repair it in order to enable the Levi to use it for the Avodah. And the Mishnah Bayas as well will proceed to discuss another example of where the Chachamim suspended the Isur Malacha on Shabbos for the sake of Karbanos. It says the Mishnah, Choitchen Yabelas B'Mikdash. They can go ahead and cut off the wart which surfaced on the carbon animal in the Beis HaMikdash, in order to remove that the blemish, which would make it unsuitable for the avodah. So that can be done, provided it's done manually by hand, which only entails a shvus d'Rabbanan, and that shvus was suspended in the face of the carbon. Avaloi b'Medina, but not outside the Beis HaMikdash. If he chooses to use a utensil to remove the wart, kan v'kan aser, that would be aser, whether inside the Beis HaMikdash or outside of it. Says Rashi, let's drop down to the wide lines in Rashi. So the first wide line, about halfway into the line, says Rashi, Choitchen Yabelas biyad ka'amar, manually, using your hands. But vim b'kli kan v'kan aser. If he uses a kli, then he can't remove the wart in that manner, whether in or out of the Beis HaMikdash. Why? Va'af agav d'chi ovid name biyad misaken ha'hu. Ask Rashi a kasha. What's the difference? Even if he uses his hands, isn't he fixing? Isn't he repairing the carbon? He's cutting away from the flesh of the animal, and that's a malacha of avatoda de goizes. It's a derivative of sharing wool. Afilu hachi, says Rashi, but since he uses his hands, given the kla'achayad ka'avid, since he's doing it indirectly in a manner which is not the normal way of doing it, she'ein kein derech l'choitcha ela b'saken. Ordinarily, you cut the wart using a knife. Therefore, if he uses his hands, ein kana l'shvus, it only involves a shvus, which the Chachamim did not apply in face of the carbon in the Beis HaMikdash. V'im b'kli, however, if he should use a kli, kan aser, that's aser in the Beis HaMikdash or out of it. Da'av malacha havi. That's a proper malacha. Since he's not deviating from the normal way of doing it, so that's a malacha, and that's not aser, even in the Beis HaMikdash, for the sake of the carbon. Continues the Gemara. Okay, so the Mishnah told us that one can remove a wart from a carbon on Shabbos in the Beis HaMikdash. V'raminu, we have a kasha, a contradiction from a Mishnah in Psachim, which indicates otherwise. Har kevai, regarding transporting the animal through the Rosh Hashanah, we're speaking about the carbon Pesach. So if Erev Pesach happens to fall out on Shabbos, you cannot go ahead and transport that animal to the Beis HaMikdash through Rosh Hashanah, or transporting it from outside the Tchum, or removing its wart. Ein doichen, they don't override Shabbos. In contrast to our Mishnah, where removal of the wart is allowed on Shabbos. So we have a contradiction. Relez actually holds you may go ahead and do these things, because he holds that even proper malachis can be done for the sake of the enabling of the carbon. Okay, but in any case, from the Tanakama, who we see does not allow removal of the wart, we have a contradiction to our Mishnah, which does allow. They will present us with no less than 4 approaches to answer this contradiction. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Lezer, Rabbi Yisib Chanina. So these two Amirayim had 2 suggestions, 2 ways to answer the kasha. Chadamar, one of them, presented as follows: Hava habalacha. Both Mishnahs by us and the Mishnah in Psachim are speaking about moist wart, so it's still part of the flesh. It's not dried up. It's part of the animal. So both Mishnahs are discussing the same type of wart. But like kasha, the answer is kan biyad, kan b'kli. Our Mishnah is speaking about removing it by hand, which only entails a d'Rabbanan, a shvus, as Rashi explained. Therefore, it's mutter. Kan b'kli. The Mishnah in Psachim is speaking about removing it using a kli, which is an avalacha. It's a proper manner of doing it, and therefore it's not allowed even for the sake of the carbon. That's one approach. V'chad amar, the other Amor answered as follows. Hava habiyad. Both missions are speaking about removing it manually, by hand. V'leikash, and the answer is habalacha, habiyavesha. Our mission is speaking where the wort is dried up, in which case it doesn't even involve a shvus. It's not even part of the animal any longer. Therefore it's mutter. Whereas the Mishnah Pesachim is speaking where it's moist and part of the flesh, and removing it would entail a shvus, and apparently even a shvus would be asar in this case because you could have done it before Shabbos. Therefore there's no reason to override Shabbos. So we have two approaches. Now the Gemara will analyze why each Amora did not subscribe to the other Amora's approach. Ulamanda Amar, Habiyad Habikli. Now let's analyze the Amora who answered that both missions are speaking about the same type of wort. Lacha, it's part of the flesh. However, in our Mishnah we're speaking about removing it by hand, in which case it's only a shvus. The Mishnah Pesachim is speaking where he's removing it with a kli, which involves a real malacha. So according to that sheet, my timer, why didn't he adopt the other approach? That the difference would be whether it's dry or moist. So he'll respond to you as follows. The reason why I didn't adopt that approach is because if our mission is speaking about a dry wort, then why restrict it? Why limit the heter to hand removal? Why can't you use a kli? If it's just dried up, it's not even part of the flesh. And why does our mission specifically say you can't use a kli? My timer, why would you be allowed to use a kli by a dried wort? Ifrucha, it simply brittles, it crumbles. It's dried up, it's not part of the flesh, there's no concern. It's not a malacha whatsoever, so even a kli would be allowed. That's why I didn't want to adopt that approach. I didn't want to interpret our mission to be speaking about a dry wort, because in that case a kli would be allowed. And Rashi explains apparently the other Manda Amar who holds that a kli would not be allowed in this case holds that, yeah, even though it's dry and falling apart, but it still appears like he's really being masak in something because he's using a kli. Therefore, it would be us. Okay, so that explains why he didn't adopt this approach. And conversely, Manda Amar, the other Amora, who answered that our mission is speaking about a dry wort, the Mishnah Pesachim, which doesn't allow removal, is speaking about a wet wort. My time Amar Habiyat Bekli. Why didn't he adopt the other approach? That our mission is speaking about removing it by hand, and the Mishnah Pesachim is speaking about removing it with a kli. What was wrong with that approach? Amar Lach, so he'll respond to you like this. The reason why I preferred my approach rather than saying that the Mishnah Pesachim, which doesn't allow, is because there's a kli there. Amalach bikli hatnan. We already know that from our Mishnah. Im bikli kan v'kan aser. Mishnah specifically tells us if he chooses to use a kli, he can't do that, whether in or out of the Beis Hamikdash. So we already know that halacha from our Mishnah and Shabbos. Why would the Mishnah Pesachim see a need to repeat the same halacha again? V'idach. So what does the other Amora do with this kasha? Hadik Tani Hasan. The reason why the Mishnah Pesachim repeated the same halacha, although it was already stated in the Mishnah Shabbos, the reason was Mishnah Dekabayi Flugi, Rabbi Yehuda Rabbanan, because the Mishnah wanted to present the machlekes between the Rabbanan who don't allow and Rabbi Yehuda who does allow. As we mentioned earlier, Rabbi Yehuda allows even a malacha, gemura, for the sake of enabling a carbon, machshir a carbon, even if it could have been done before Shabbos. So that's why the Mishnah wants to repeat the halacha to present it in the context of the machlekes Rabbi Yehuda Rabbanan. So the Mishnah there, according to this approach, is speaking about doing a malacha, removing the wort with a kli, which is a malacha deraisa. V'idach. So what does the other Amor respond? He says, it can't be that the Mishnah there is speaking about removing a proper wort with a kli, which is a malacha deraisa. You know why? Because the Mishnah presents a list of different things. Removing the wort, carrying through Rishus Harabim, bringing it from outside the Tchum, which all involve only Issa D'Rabbanan. So let's assume it's all one category, and everything there entails only the Rabbanan, including wort removal. So apparently it's not speaking about a kli, which would entail Issa D'Oraisa. V'idach, the other shita says like this: Dumya, der kevai v've'asa mechutz l'tchum ketani. The Mishnah mentions removal of the wort in connection And similar to the other items there, bringing the animal through Rishus Harabim, which only involves Issa D'Rabbanan. Why? Because it's a live creature. And we know that Hachai, Noise is Atzmai. A living thing lifts itself a bit, makes itself lighter, in which case there's no Malacha De'iraisa for Haitzah B'Rishus Harabim. At most it's only Issa D'Rabbanan. Likewise, bringing something from out of the Tchum is D'Rabbanan. So we see the whole Mishnah is discussing Isur D'Rabbanan. Dumya Dar Kevoi. The removal of the wart is similar to transporting the animal through Rishus Harabim, which is only D'Rabbanan, and it is similar and connected to bringing from outside the Tchum, which is also only D'Rabbanan. So they're only D'Rabbanan. So apparently the Mishnah there is not discussing removal of the wart with a kli which entails D'Oraisa. That's how I prove my approach is correct. The other Amoira, who interpreted the Mishnah Psachim to be speaking about a kli, and that explains why you can't remove it because it's an Issa D'Oraisa. He responds like this. Actually, the Mishnah there is speaking about Malachis Min HaTorah. Why? Says the Gemara, we speak about transporting the animal from through the Rishus Harabim. We're not following Rav Nosson Shita. The Omar Hachayne says Atzma. He says that a living creature lifts itself a bit. In which case, there's no Melacha D'Oraisa. No, we're not following that Shita. We're following Shita's Rabban, who hold that even carrying an animal entails Issa D'Oraisa Melacha of Eitzah. Likewise, when we discuss bringing an animal from outside the boundaries, we're following Rabbi Kiva, the Omar Tchum D'Oraisa. So yeah, actually the Mishnah there is in the context of Melachas D'Oraisa. And that explains why wart removal is asur, because we're speaking about using a kli, which entails Issa D'Oraisa. So this is the approach of this Amar, that the Mishnah in Shabbos allows removing the wart because it's a Shus D'Rabbanan. He's doing it biyad, whereas the Mishnah Psachim, which does not allow, is because he's removing it with a kli, which is a Malacha D'Oraisa, which was not suspended, not overridden for the sake of the korban. Says the Gemara, Masef Rav Yosef. How can you say that the Mishnah there is in the context of Malachas D'Oraisa? The Mishnah itself seems to indicate otherwise. Amar Belezer. Rabbi Lezer presented an argument to support his opinion that all these types of activities can be done for the sake of the machshirei korban, to enable the korban Pesach to be brought. And he presented it as follows. Kal v'chaymer. U'mashchita shehi mishum malacha. Doiches HaShabbos. Since we find that even shechting the animal, which, although it's a malacha gemura, nevertheless it's doiches Shabbos. Right? You can shech the korban Pesach even on Shabbos. Elu shemishum shvus. These activities which only entail a shvus. Certainly, of course, doesn't lend to the allowance of being doiches Shabbos. So, in any case, we see that we're speaking about shvus. Rabbi Lezer clearly is expressing it in that manner. These are matters of shvus. So, it seems that the approach adopted by Dara Moira, that the Mishnah there is discussing removing the wart with a kli, which entails Malacha D'Oraisa, and that explains why Tanakama doesn't allow. That approach seems to be problematic, and seems to be contradicted from the words of the Mishnah itself, that the discussion is merely shvus. Elam Rav Yosef, he has a third approach to answer the stira between our Mishnah and Shabbos, which allows wart removal, in contrast to Mishnah Psachim, which does not allow. Hava b'yad, both Mishnahs are speaking about removing it by hand, which only entails a shvus. And the difference is, ushvus, the migdash. When we're speaking about a shvus to enable a korban in the Beis HaMikdash, b'migdash itiru. They only allow that if it's actually taking place in the Beis HaMikdash, such as our Mishnah where you're removing the mum from the korban in the Beis HaMikdash. Yeah. Over there the Chacham suspended this is the Rabbanon, because it's within the confines of the Beis HaMikdash. So shvus, the Migdash, hitiru. However, the Mishnah Psachim, although he's enabling the korban to be brought to the Mizbech, but where is this shvus taking place? So every animal owner, every korban Pesach owner, tends to his animal in his own home. That's where he checks it over, makes sure it's free of any mumim, and removes the warts. That type of shvus the Chachamim did not allow. Shvus the Migdash, to suspend a Isser Shvus for the sake of Migdash to enable the carbon to make it suitable for Avodah. Bin Medina, but if that Shvus is taking place outside the Beis HaMikdash, such as in this individual's home, La Yitiru, Chum did not suspend their Isser in that manner. Anything outside Beis HaMikdash is categorized as one, regardless of whether it is for the sake and benefit of a carbon. They did not allow a Shvus outside Beis HaMikdash confines. They didn't want to differentiate to avoid confusion. And that explains why, although in our Mishnah we allow water removal because it's done in the Beis HaMikdash for the sake of the carbon, in contrast to the Mishnah Pesachim, where the Tanna Kamma does not allow water removal because it's done in the person's home, which is outside the Beis HaMikdash. Yosef Abaye was sitting, and he was presenting this approach of Rav Yosef that even a Shvus the Migdash would only be mutter in the actual location of the Beis HaMikdash. Eisvi Rav Safra l'Abaye. So Rav Safra challenged him from the Mishnah. If the fellow was sitting reading a scroll on a threshold, and the far side of the sefer rolled away and landed in the Rosh Hashanah in front of the threshold, Godly Esla, you can go simply and roll it back, bring it back. Says the Gemara V'Hacha. Now, in this case, the Shvus the Migdash, the Chacham are suspending an Issa D'Rabbanan because the sefer is already partially sitting in Rosh Hashanah, so all he's holding on to part of the item. He's not really transferring it because it's still partially in his hands. But retrieving that item entails the Issa Shvus because we're concerned that perhaps next time it's going to completely slip out of his hands and he'll go and fetch it from Rosh Hashanah. So it's the Issa Shvus. And it involves a sefer which is Migdash. Rashi says it's something of Kedusha. So it's a Shvus the Migdash. V'acha, this Shvus the Migdash, but where is it taking place? B'Medino. It's outside the Beis HaMikdash. But like Gazrina, we don't see the Chacham concerned. They suspended. There is a Shvus in this case because it entails a sefer. But like Gazrina, Dilma Nafel, Vas Lesuye, we're not concerned that perhaps it's going to completely slip out of his hands, which will tempt him to go and retrieve it. So we see that Chacham suspended a Shvus for the sake of Migdash, even outside the Beis HaMikdash. Says the Gemara, but haven't we established and interpreted that Mishnah as follows? This could be karmelis. This threshold is merely a karmelis v'shesarab a veres lefanel. So it's a karmelis with a street running in front of him. In which case, it can never lead to a malacha d'oraisa, because that worst case is going to slip out of his hands. He'll go bring it back from the shesarab to the karmelis. It's only an issa d'Rabbanan. So in this case, we don't apply an additional gzera. The kivun igda biyadai, since at least part of it is still in his hands, afilu shvus namileka, there isn't even a shvus applied here because it would be considered a double safeguard. Because it can never even come to issa d'oraisa, even if it completely slips out of his hand. So this is how we learned earlier in the Gemara a couple of blot ago, that explains why there's no isser here. So it doesn't relate to our discussion. Meaning, it's not because it's a sefer that we suspended the Isser. There's no Isser altogether because we're speaking about Shiris D'Rabbanan, the Karmelis, and he's still holding on to it. There's no concern whatsoever. Eisves, or Safra challenged him with another Kasha from a Mishnah, Meshal Shon Pesach. We're speaking about the Chabura, the group bringing the Karm Pesach. They can lower their animal, Letaner, into the oven, Imcha Shecha, right before nightfall, meaning right before Shabbos arrives, where generally there's a restriction. One may not do so for concern that he may go ahead and stir the coals on Shabbos, so you can only put something into the oven if it's going to get roasted before Shabbos. But when it comes to the carbon Pesach, we allow them to freely roll it into the tanner without any concern. Now let's analyze. What are we speaking here? The Shvus the Migdash. We're suspending an Issa D'Rabbanan for the sake of the carbon. But where is it taking place? The Medina. It's outside the Beis HaMikdash. And we don't seem to be concerned that it may lead them to stir the coals. We're suspending that concern, that Issa D'Rabbanan, for the sake of the carbon, even outside the Beis HaMikdash territory. Ishtik, Sabaya remained silent. He was stumped. When he returned to Rav Yosef, and he told him, Hachi Amalei Rav Safra. Rav Safra challenged me from this Mishnah here. So this was actually Rav Yosef's pshat, right? Rav Yosef was the one who told us that the shvus outside the Beis HaMikdash is not mutter. And Rav Safra challenged me. He brought me a kasha from the Mishnah of Karban Pesach. Rav Yosef responded, My time relate to Shamali. Why didn't you respond to him that it's not a kasha from the Korban Pesach? B'nai Chabura's reasoning. The members of the Chabura, the group that bring the Korban Pesach, are conscientious. And in that case, the Chachamim rightfully suspended their Shavuos. There's no concern whatsoever of it coming to a malacha, stirring coals. Rosh Hashanah adds that presumably they appointed a manager, somebody, a learned fellow, a Chacham to direct the affairs there, to show them, instruct them how to proceed. So there's no concern of malacha. Abaye, why did Abaye want to respond in this manner? Kayhanim reason hein. Sure, we say Kayhanim coming into the Beis Hamikdash. As reason, you don't enter the Beis Hamikdash to do avodah unless you're fully well versed, fully knowledgeable in the halachas of avodah. So we assume things were done properly. Yeah, that we say. But Bnei Chabura's reason hein. But to say that the Bnei Chabura, ordinary fellows bringing the Korban Pesach, who says there's reason, and therefore Abai did not think to respond in this manner. So far we have three approaches to answer the kasha. Says more a fourth approach. Rava Amar, I'm coming to answer the stira between our Mishnah, which allows one to remove a wart from a korban on Shabbos, whereas the Mishnah Psachim says you cannot remove that wart. Rava Amar, Rabbi Lezer he says like this, that this is actually dependent on the machlekes between Rabbi Lezer, who allows malachos to be done to enable a korban, to enable a mitzvah, even if it involves a d'oraisa, a malacha, even if you had the opportunity to take care of this before Shabbos. Rabbi Lezer holds that the machshirim, the accessories, the preparations are equated with the mitzvah itself. And Shita is reflected in our Mishnah. Therefore, we can remove that wart from the korban, although you could have done it before Shabbos. Whereas the Mishnah in Psachim, where the Tanakama there says, don't remove a wart, reflects Shitas Rabban, who say, look, you could have done this before Shabbos. Therefore, even if it's only a Shvus, even if you're going to do it in a indirect manner, Kalachayad, removed by hand, etc., it's still awesome. Rav Amar Reb Lezer, our Mishnah is following Shittas Reb Lezer, the Amar Machshira mitzvah, Deichnas Shabbos, accessories, preparations of a mitzvah, Deichnas Shabbos, and therefore you can remove that wart on Shabbos. But then the obvious question is, then why are you limited to doing it by hand? Why can't you do it with a kli? Umayder Reb Lezer agrees the kama, the efshar, the shanoyu mishaninan. Wherever you have the ability to change things, do it a bit differently than it's done during the week, go ahead and drop down, minimize the malacha activity. Instead of using a utensil, do it by hand. You meant to do so. Even though theoretically you can do it with a kli. But we meant to do it by hand, and hence our Mishnah tells us, remove it by hand specifically, but not with a kli. So in conclusion, regarding removing a yabelis, this wart which creates a mum, our Mishnah says you can go ahead and remove it. Mishnah Pesachim does not allow. We have four approaches. Number one, the words in both Mishnahs are speaking about lacha, they're moist and still connected to the flesh. Our Mishnah allows removal because he's doing it by hand, which only entails a shvus. The Mishnah Pesachim is speaking about removing it with a kli, which is a malacha deraisa and is not allowed in this case. Approach number two, our Mishnah is speaking about, both Mishnahs are speaking, where he's removing it by hand. Our Mishnah allows because it's dried up and doesn't even entail a malacha d'rabbanan, whereas the Mishnah in Pesachim is speaking about a moist wart, in which case is a shvus d'rabbanan, and Tanakama doesn't allow because he could have done it before Shabbos. Approach number three, both Mishnahs are speaking about moist warts, removal by hand, and a shvus would be mutter in this case. Even though he could have done it before Shabbos, he's doing it for the sake of the korban, and it's mutter. And the difference is, our Mishnah is speaking where the removal is taking place in the Beis Hamikdash. So Chacham suspended their shvus in the Beis Hamikdash territory. Whereas the Mishnah in Pesachim is speaking where it's outside the Beis Hamikdash, person's private korban being done at home, in which case Chacham did not suspend their shvus, even if it's for the sake of a korban. Finally, the fourth approach is that both Mishnahs are speaking about a moist wart being removed by hand, and the Mishnah by us reflects Shittas Rabbi Lezer, who says that any malacha, even a malacha d'oraisa, for the sake of the korban can be done but you meant to be Mishana. Do it a bit differently than the way it's normally done, so do it by hand. Whereas the Mishnah Pesachim, which doesn't allow even hand removal, is following Shittas Rabban, who say that even when it comes to a Issa de Rabban Shvus, you can't do that if you're able to do it before Shabbos. Continues the Gemara. Okay, so you tell me, even according to Rabbi Lezer, we're meant to minimize our involvement in the Malacha as much as possible. Mai, where do we find support for this concept? The Sanya, as we learned in the Brisa, Koyin she'olso bayabelis. If a wart surfaced on the body of a kohen, which makes him unsuitable for avodah, it's considered to be a mum. He has to remove it to enable him to do the avodah in Beis Hamikdash. So if this happened on Shabbos, this wart surfaced on Shabbos itself, how do you remove it? So his friend approaches him and bites the wart using his teeth. Bishinav in, he's not allowed to remove it using his teeth, which is considered a shvus because it's not the ordinary manner in which way you remove a wart. So bishinav in, yes, he can use his teeth. Bikli like he can use a kli. That's number one. Number two, chaveroi in. It can only be done through his friend, where the job won't be properly done and it's considered to be a shvus. But he himself can't go ahead and remove his own wart. Now, let's just stop for a second. Rashi brings a machlekes between Rabbi Lezer and the Chachamim back in Maseches Shabbos. Daf Tzadik Dal and Beis, relating to this topic. So if a person manually removes his nail or his teeth or his hair, he does it himself using his hand. Rabbi Lezer says that's considered to be a real malacha. Whereas the Chachamim say it's not a malacha, it's not properly doing it, it's only a shvus. Now the Gemara tells us that Rabbi Lezer would agree that if a person himself, that Rabbi Lezer agrees that if a friend comes over and does it for him, it's not a proper job, and even Rabbi Lezer would agree in that case that it's merely a shvus, there's no malacha involved. Okay, so that's a unrelated machlekes, and in our Gemara we have another machlekes between Rabbi Lezer and Chachamim regarding machshirim, as we discussed earlier. According to Rabbi Lezer, a person can do a malacha deraisa to enable a carbon, machshir a carbon, even if he could have done it before Shabbos. He equates the preparation of the carbon to the carbon itself, whereas the Rabbanan maintain that you can't go do that. And the only thing you can do, according to the Rabbanan in this sugya now, is that if it only involves a shvus, and that shvus, that is the Rabbanan, could not have been done before Shabbos, then you can do that on Shabbos as well to enable the carbon. Okay, so we have two really unrelated machlekes in Lezer and Chacham. They're really not linked to each other, but they're going to be enwrapped with each other in this brisa here. So again, the brisa tells us if the kohen discovers a wart, his friend approaches and bites it off using his teeth. This is in a manner which is not the typical to remove a wart. Says the Gemara, Mani, let's analyze the brisa which requires the wart to be removed using his teeth, and specifically only his friend can do it. Are we following Shittas Rabbanan regarding the other question, the question regarding machshirei carbon? Rabbanan say that you can't go ahead and do a malacha to enable the carbon. The only thing you can do is a shvus, and therefore Uba Migdash, since we're speaking about enabling the carbon Beis Hamikdash, Chacham suspended the shvus, and that's the reason why you can remove the wart in a manner which only entails Issa de Rabbanan, using your teeth, using your friend. Says the Gemara, 1 second. But what's the Rabbanan's opinion back in Maseches Shabbos regarding wart removal? So removing hair, removing nails, warts, seems to be all in the same, one in the same category. So what's the Rabbanan's shita there? They hold that even if a person does it to himself, self-removal is also only a shvus. So if the heter here is because it's a shvus for the sake of the carbon in the Beis Hamikdash, so fine, we understand that you can't use a kli because that would entail a malacha, but what's the difference if he himself removes it or his friend? In either case, the Rabbanan over there hold, Rabbanan Maseches Shabbos hold that even self-removal would only be a shvus. Says the Gemara, Kivan the Amir Rabbanan ba'alma mishum shvus. Since the Rabbanan generally hold that this type of procedure is only a shvus, Hacha, in our case, where we allow a shvus, malihu, mali chaver. What's the difference if he himself removes it or his friend? So apparently the Brisa is not following Shittas Rabbanon. Ela lav Rabbi Lezer, apparently following Rabbi Lezer, the Omar, Ba'al Machayev Chatas, who maintains that generally speaking, if a person self-removes, he's Chayev Chatas. And in our case, since we're speaking about doing it for the sake of the Korban Beis HaMikdash, really, even a malacha, even a proper malacha would be mutter according to Rabbi Lezer. According to him, you can do this because it's for the sake of the mitzvah. So why then does the Brisa specifically only allow his friend to approach him, where there's no malacha involved? Because even Rabbi Lezer holds that self-removal is a malacha, but his friend removing it doesn't produce a proper result, and it's not considered to be a malacha. Why? Why does it have to be done that manner? If according to Rabbi Lezer, even machshir mitzvah deicha Shabbos, even when we're speaking about a real malach? Apparently, we prove from this brisa, whenever we have the option of minimizing our involvement, diminishing the level, going down, dropping from a malacha to a shvus, we're meant to do so. So even though theoretically, technically, we're allowed to do a true malacha, but Rabbi Lezer maintains that we advise you to drop down. And therefore, rather than doing it in a melacha manner, doing it yourself, self-removal, we only allow his friend to come over and do it, which only entails a shvus. So this proves our point. It says, no, lo'ilam Rabbana. We're speaking about Shittas Rabbanon, who really hold that this heter only applies to a shvus. Only if you're doing it in a Issa Rabbanon, then we can do it for the sake of cover, but not a malach. Now, if that's the case, again, why? We understand why it has to be done with your teeth, because that's only a shvus, but why can't he self-remove it? The Rabbanan hold even self-removal only entails a shvus. Right? That was the kasha we asked. Certainly we follow Shittas Rabbanan. The question is, why does his friend have to do it? Very simple. Out of practical considerations. We also be crazy if the wart would have surfaced on his abdomen. Hachinami, certainly he would have done it himself. He has perfect access to it. We're speaking this wart which needs to be bitten off surfaced on his back, where he has no access. About Yadav on his elbow. He has no ability to remove it. That's why he asks his friend to do it for him. But certainly he himself can do it, because even if he himself removes it, it only involves a shvus, which is mutter according to the Rabbanan, for the sake of the Korban in the Beis HaMikdash. Says in 1 second. But why remove it using his teeth? Why can't he remove it using his hands, which is merely a shvus? If we're following Shittas Rabbanan, nishkel in the biyad. Why doesn't the Brisa instruct him to remove it using his hands? And actually, it would be better for the Brisa to instruct him in this manner, because that would teach us something. You know what it would teach us? Number one, it would teach us that you can use your hands, but not a kli, because that's a malacha. According to Chachamim, a malacha is not justified for the sake of the korban. That's number one. Number two, v'tifsha de Rabbi Lezer. This will teach us. This will support Rabbi Lezer's din. The Rabbi Lezer tells us there in Mesechus Shabbos regarding that machlokes between Rabbi Lezer and Chachamim about removing something from one's body. So Rabbi Elazar, the Amir, explained, machlokes biyad. You meant to know that the context of the machlokes there is only when he removes it using his hands. He manually removes his hair, his nail, his wart. But should he use a kli divar kol chayiv? All agree there's a chayiv chatas. So if the Brisa here would have told us, look, use your hands, that would indicate that only hands, because it's a shvus, because a kli, all agree, is a chayiv chatas. Even the Rabbanan agreed to Rabbi Lezer back in Mesechus Shabbos that removing your nail or your hair using a kli is a true malacha. So there would be lots of lessons learned from this brisa. Should the brisa have described the halacha and the allowance specific to a hand as opposed to a kli, we would learn something from it. Well, why does the brisa choose to speak about teeth, which now leaves things open in the air? Meaning you have no indication that Rabbi Lezer's interpretation of that machlokes is correct. Meaning, we only allow one way, which is a shvus, but not the other way, which is a malacha, which indicates that a kli is a malacha. We don't really have that proven from our brisa, because look, the brisa doesn't even allow using your hands, which is merely a shvus. The brisa is limiting the heter to using your teeth. So, there's nothing to be learned from this brisa. It's a bit confusing for us. There must be a different reason, perhaps, why teeth are required. And in any case, we have no right from this brisa that the heter is only because it's not a kli, but if it would be a kli, it would be an issa deraisa. Perhaps, just as you can't use your hands, although it's issa derabanan, you can't use a kli, although it's issa derabanan as well. So there will be nothing proven from this brisa. Why then does the brisa specify use your teeth, rather than say use your hands, which would indicate, look, hands, yeah, because it's a shvus, but not a kli, which is a malach, and this would prove to us that all agree a kli is a malach. So we have a bit of a difficulty with this brisa's wording. If the brisa is following Shittas Rabbanan, who allow a shvus, but not a malacha, why can't he use his hands? Okay, a kli not, but why is not his hands? Says in Rabbi Tamech. Now, according to your challenge, meaning, fine, it can't be the Rabbanan because of this kasha. So if the brisa would be Rabbi Lezer, would it be any better? Rabbi Tamech, the Rabbi Lezer nami, according to Rabbi Lezer as well. Why can't his friend approach him and remove the wart using his hands? Meaning, why did the brisa limit the heter to teeth removal? Says the Gemara, that we can answer. It is more logical to say that the brisa is following Shittas Rabbi Lezer, and we'll explain why the brisa is limiting the heter to removing of the wart using his teeth, rather than using his hands. So we'll explain it like this. It works well if the brisa is following Shittas Rabbi Lezer. Which Rabbi Lezer? Rabbi Lezer holds that a malacha d'oraisa can be done for the sake of a korban. And theoretically speaking, you can even remove this wart from the kohen using a kli, which is a malacha. It's fine. However, we know that Rabbi Lezer requires shinoi. Whenever you could, you meant to minimize your involvement in the malacha. Therefore, rather than using a kli, you must drop down. But you must drop down all the way to the bottom. Don't even use your hands. Use your teeth, which is really an inconvenient and inefficient way of removing that wart. So you meant to go down all the way to the bottom. So now we understand the brisa. Hainu de gazar yada to kli. He says, don't use your hands because it might lead a person to use a kli. Meaning, a person will say, look, according to Rabbi Lezer, you're allowed to use a kli. It's machshir korban, it's machshir mitzvah. So if the brisa allows him to use his hand, he might get confused and say, well, I'll decide instead of using my hands, which is only a shvus, I'll use a kli. Therefore, the brisa specifically says, don't even use your hands for this purpose. Use your teeth, which demonstrates and indicates, look, you meant to minimize as much as possible. So don't even do a hand removal, which is a semi-proper, efficient way of removing it. Use your teeth, which are completely inefficient, an improper way of removal. So we understand the brisa, why teeth, and only teeth are allowed. El Yamas Rabbanan. However, if the brisa is following Shittas Rabbanan, Yamas Rabbanan, if the brisa is reflecting Rabbanan, who say that a proper malacha is not allowed, only a shvus is allowed. Nishkale niela biyad. Why can't he just remove it using his hands? I mean, there's no room for confusion. Everybody knows you can't do a malacha. So should we allow him to remove it using his hands? It's not going to lead a person to cut off the wart using a kli. There's no room for that gzera. So why didn't the brisa discuss hand removal? As we mentioned earlier, it would actually be beneficial for us. It would teach us a lesson. It would support that halacha of Rabbi Lezer back in Masechas Shabbos, who says that Rabbanan only considered hand removal a shvus, but using a kli is a malacha. And this would be indicated in this brisa as well, because the brisa is telling us, look, you can use your hands, which is a shvus, but you can't use a kli, which is a malacha. So the brisa should have done that. Rather, the brisa only allowed using your teeth, which now doesn't teach us much. it's not going to teach us that a kli is a malacha because, look, you can only use your teeth. You can't use your hands, even though hands are not either a malacha. So perhaps there's another reason why you can't do anything other than teeth. So there's no right from here that a kli is a malacha. So why didn't the Brisa discuss hands, which would indicate hands are shvus, and therefore it's mutter, and not a kli, which is a malacha? Why did the Brisa speak about teeth? So apparently this approach is incorrect. The Brisa is Rabbi Lezer. As we explained, there's room for confusion because according to Rabbi Lezer, even a kli is really mutter. Therefore, the Brisa found it necessary to only allow in the case of a teeth, which is really mitigating the concern. It indicates to us that we want to be mishana as much as possible. Go all the way down, just use your teeth. So this supports our contention that according to Rabbi Lezer, even though theoretically it's meant to do malacha, but we're meant to be mishana, to deviate, to conduct ourselves differently, change from the norm, minimize our involvement, v'sulei midi, and there doesn't seem to be any additional challenges and responses here, meaning we have nothing more to ask, nothing more to add. Our raya seems to be substantiated according to Blezer. Wherever you can be mishana, you're meant to be mishana. Continues the Mishnah. There's another example of a shvus, which was suspended for the sake of the avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. Kohen shalaka be'etzboi, if a kohen has a wound on his finger, he can wrap this reed grass, which actually aids and remedies the wound. He can do it in the Beis Hamikdash for the sake of the avodah, to cover up the wound out of respect for the avodah, and perhaps we're speaking that he has no other material to use for this purpose. So that could be done in the Beis Hamikdash, avaloi b'Medina, but not outside the Beis Hamikdash, because one is not meant to engage in remedies on Shabbos for concern that he might crush those ingredients, which is a malach of teichen. But if his intention is to extract blood, which is a malacha d'oraisa, a malacha of chayvel, kan v'kanasa, that can't be done in or out of Beis Hamikdash. Let's see Rashi inside. So if we take a look at the wide line, so it's about the 7th line down, right in the middle of that line, masnisen. Says Rashi, korich le'agemi, he can wrap a gemi. V'afa pishal gemi marpes hamaka, although the gemi benefits and remedies the makkah, that's allowed. Hoil v'hashta miya tzorech avodah, since he's doing it for the sake of the service in Beis Hamikdash, it's mutter. The lav oirach arash, heter makasa, it's not proper that his wound should be open and exposed. Im avodah, with the avodah that he's doing, im mechasa is begemi, therefore he covers it with this band-aid. Avaloi b'Medina, but not outside the Beis Hamikdash. Shemirape b'Shabbos, because it's doing refuah on Shabbos. Or refuah b'Shabbos, shvusi v'aser. So a shvus is suspended in the Beis Hamikdash for the sake of avodah. V'im lo yitidam, but if his intention is to extract blood, shema'at b'gemi, he tightens it. Lo yitidama, to extract blood, that's a malacha. Kan v'kan aser. That's aser in either case. She'ein zeh tzorech avodah. First of all, it's not really benefiting the avodah. V'oid, in addition, davalei chayvel. He's doing a malacha of chayvel, av malacha. Lo yimishel gabayu. And the av malacha is not allowed, even for the kohen in the Beis Hamikdash. Continues the Gemara. Amar Yehuda Brei de Rabbi Chia. Lo yishanu el gemi. The Mishnah only allows placing a gemi, which is not a garment, not a beged. There's no concern. Aval tziltzil katan, but if he uses even a small strap, a band, aviyitu begadim, he can't wrap it on his finger because he's adding to the total number of begadim that he's wearing. And we know that a kohen who wears begadim in excess of the number, the amount of begadim, kohen is meant to wear 4, kohen gadol meant to wear 8. If he adds begadim, he's disqualified from avodah. So even the small band sitting on his finger is considered to be an added beged, which disqualifies him from the avodah. So you can only use a band-aid as gemi, but not 8 tziltzil katan. So that's the first opinion. For Rabbi Yehuda Amar, he disagrees. He says there's no concern of yitur begadim. Lo amru yitur begadim el b'makim gadim. Only on the location on the body where a person is meant to wear begadim. So an additional beged gets added to the total and disqualifies it. Lo amru yitur begadim el b'makim gadim. Alo shaloi b'makim gadim. But if it's out of the area on the body which is meant to accommodate clothing, for instance on his finger, well, you have a yitur begadim, an additional beged doesn't create any concern. Continues the Gemara. Okay, let's go back to the Mishnah where he's going to place a gemi Or according to Rabbi Yehuda, even a band on his finger is okay. Why doesn't this present a chatzitza problem? It's creating a barrier between the kohen and the kli that he's holding. It's meant to have direct contact with the kli during avodah. Says Rabbi Smile, he placed the band-aid on his left hand, which is not involved in the act of avodah. Inami b'yamin. Alternatively, it's on his right. Shaloi makam avodah. However, it's not in the place of avodah. For instance, on the top of his hand, which is not meant to come into contact with the kli. Continues the Gemara. So we have the first opinion of Rabbi Yehuda Kessler that an added beged, even on his finger, which is not a location which is meant to accommodate b'gadim, is considered to be yitur b'gadim. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says it is not. Upliga de Rava. Rabbi Yehuda's shita that when something is outside the makom b'gadim, that doesn't present a concern, is in dispute of Rava. The Amar Rava Amar Chizda, but makom b'gadim, if he adds material under his beged, even if it's just one strand, one thread, that creates a barrier between the beged, which is meant to lie directly on the kohen's flesh. It creates a chatzitz. However, if it's outside the makom of the b'gadim, for instance, on his finger, where he doesn't wear clothing, in that case, depends how large that material is. If it has a shear of beged, that's considered to be an added beged and disqualifies it. Shalish al shalish chaytitzes. If the material is large enough, 3 by 3, it's boys, finger width, that has a shear of a beged, and chaytitzes here is just a barotum. It means that it creates a concern because it's considered to be an added beged, even if he wears it on his finger. But if it's less than 3 by 3, it's boys, it's not deemed a beged, and it's not considered to be as though he's wearing an additional beged. So Rav, the name of Chizah tells us that even shaloi b'makom gadim, if it's a significantly sized beged, that gets added to his total amount of gadim and makes him pasul for avodah. And Rabbi Yehuda, he's certainly in dispute that Rabbi Yehuda maintains that anything out of the area of the begadim, on his finger for instance, doesn't pose any concern. So he's certainly being chaylik on that. Says the Gemara, but what about the first shita, who told us that it's still cut on this small band worn on a finger is considered to be an added beged, even though it's not 3 by 3, it's boys. So is that in dispute of Rava, the name of Chizah requires it to be a large size beged? Is there a machlekes, or perhaps can we reconcile the shitas? Adar Rabbi Yehuda braid the Rabbi Chia, we name a pligim. Should we assume that he's in dispute of that shita as well? Who says that even a small band is reckoned with? Says no. Perhaps generally it needs to be properly sized. Shanit silsel cut on the chashav. Perhaps a small band is different because it has prominence. It's considered to be a complete entity. It's a band. It's a belt. So even if it's small in size, that's considered to be an extra beged and makes him puzzle. So in conclusion, Rabbi Yehuda maintains adding a beged in a place, on a place of his guf where he's not meant to wear clothing, for instance his hand, his finger, that's not considered to be yitur b'gadim. Whereas Rava tells us it is considered to be an extra beged, even if it's on his finger, provided it's large in size, 3 by 3 it's boys. And then we're concluded that perhaps, even if it's smaller, but it's a item of prominence, like a silsul katan, it would be considered to be an extra beged. Lishna achrina amrila, there's another version of Rabbi Yechon's shita. So according to the first version, Rabbi Yechon says, Shaloi b'makim gadim, there's no concern. In the second version, he's going to say, even Shaloi b'makim gadim, if it's 3 by 3 it's boys, it's considered to be an extra beged. Lishna achrina amrila, there's another version of events. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Chia. So the Gemara is going to repeat the whole discussion, but really the only difference will be in Rabbi Yechon's shita. So we have the first statement, Amar Yehuda Rabbi Chia, leishanu. The Mishnah only allows elegemi using this reed grass, which is not a beged. But if it's a small band, that's considered to be an extra beged, which makes him pasul for avodah. Rabbi Yechon Amar, no, a small band that doesn't have significance. Yeah, if it's sitting under his beged, between the beged and the flesh, so yeah, even if it's small in size, less than 3 by 3, it creates a chatzitza. But if it's outside of the makom of b'gadim, for instance, on a person's finger, then a small band creates no concern. Sholosh al sholosh chaytzitzis. If it's 3 by 3, it's considered a beged. That is chaytzitz, Rashi explains, it's considered to be an extra beged. However, pachas misholish, if it's smaller than 3, it's not reckoned with ein chaytzitzit. It's not considered to be an added beged. So it's clear that Rabbi Yochanan is disagreeing with the first shita of Rabbi Yehuda. He says, even a small band which has prominence is not reckoned with. If it's shaloi b'makom gadim, if it's less than 3 by 3, it's boys. V'hainu du Rav Amar Rav Chizda. And this concurs with Rava, the name of Chizda, that also requires it to be properly sized to be considered a yitur begadim. Says the Gemara, but one second. Lema pliga, should we say, do we have to say that Rava, who says that it needs to be 3 by 3, is being cholik on Rabbi Yehuda, who says that even a band, a tziltzul katan, is considered to be an extra beged? Lema pliga to Rabbi Yehuda Breder Bechia? Do we have to say that he's in dispute of that shita? Now, Rabbi Yochanan certainly is disagreeing because Rabbi Yochanan responded to Rabbi Yehuda. He says, no, a band is nothing. It needs to be 3 by 3. But Rava, in the name of Chizda, who didn't direct his words at Rabbi Yehuda, he simply stated that you need to be 3 by 3. But perhaps, in the case of Rabbi Yehuda, where it's a tziltzul katan, which has added chashivas, perhaps he would agree that is equated with 3 by 3. He says, well, yeah, shani tziltzul katan the chashiv. A small band is indeed different. It's chashiv. And Rava would agree in that case it's considered to be yitur begadim. So according to the second approach, Rabbi Yochanan says even a small band is not considered to be yitur begadim. It needs to be 3 by 3. Whereas Rava and the other shita hold that 3 by 3, or if it is a band which has chashivas. Says the Rabbi Yochanan. Now, according to Rabbi Yochanan, that even a tziltzul is not a concern if it's sitting on his finger. Shloi b'makam gadim. Adar shmin and gemi. Why did the Mishnah describe the halacha as the kohen wrapping a gemi which is not a beged? Lishmin and tziltzul katan. The Mishnah could have told us a greater chiddush, that he can wrap even a small band on his finger because it's shaloi b'makom gadim and it's not 3 by 3, it's boys. Says the Gemara, the Mishnah wanted to teach us by using these words, the gemi masi, that you can use even this gemi, although it benefits, it remedies the makkah. You can still use it, as we explained earlier, because it's a shvus l'tzarech avoid in the Beis HaMikdash, and therefore was allowed even on Shabbos. That's why the Mishnah specifically picked the gemi in order to teach us this halacha. But not to say that you can't use it tziltzul, because according to Rabbi Yochanan, even a tziltzul, which is a small band, can be used. There's no concern of yitur begadim. So in conclusion, we learned that if a kohen adds a beged to his prescribed begadim, yitur begadim, but it's shaloi b'makom gadim. It's not in the area where he wears begadim. It's on his finger, etc. So Rabbi Yehuda tells us, if it's a small band, that's considered to be an extra beged. Rabbi Yochanan, we have two approaches. According to the first version, he says, that's not considered to be an extra beged. If it's out of the makom gadim, no matter how large it is. According to the second approach, if it's outside the makom gadim, if it's 3 by 3, then it's considered. Rava tells us that if it's 3 by 3, it is reckoned with, and the Gemara concludes, that would seem that even he would agree that a tziltzul katan, due to its chashivas, is considered to be yitur begadim. Okay, time for a brief chazara of today's daf. We learned that one may remove a wart from the korban on Shabbos in the Beis HaMikdash, provided that it's only a shvus, if he's doing it by hand, because the Chachamim suspended the Isser shvus for the sake of the korban Beis HaMikdash, but he can't do it using a kli, which entails a malachim and atorah. We had a stira between our Mishnah, which allows the removal of this wart, whereas in the Mishnah Psachim, the Mishnah doesn't allow it. The Gemara presented us with 4 approaches to answer the contradiction. We learned that even according to Rabbi Lezer, who generally allows even a malacha gemura to be done for the sake of machshirei mitzvah, however, we're meant to minimize as much as possible. We have another example of a shvus, which is allowed in the Beis HaMikdash. The kohen can wrap this gemi on his wound for the sake of the avodah, but he can't do it in a way where it involves a malacha such as extracting the dam. We concluded with a discussion about yitur begadim, shaloi b'makom gadim. So if he places an added beged on himself outside the area where he generally wears his begadim, such as on his finger, is that considered to be an added beged? We have machlekes.